What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're reviewing God of High School episode 1. I'll be going over what the anime did well for an anime only viewer. I'll be going over skipped content that wasn't in the episode, that was in the manhwa and was skipped past or wasn't adapted in the first episode, which relatively should have. My overall thoughts of the episode. Hope you enjoy. If you do, make sure to subscribe and join the Discord to talk more about this greatness. And I'm still working on getting the strikes resolved on my main channel, but for the next 2 weeks most likely this will be the channel where most of my uploads go. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the review. So first up, I'll talk about the opening. So as a whole, the opening shits on the Tower of God one. Of course, you're going to compare the second Crunchyroll original manhwa to the first one, Tower of God. And as a whole, the opening just shits on the Tower of God one, with this one being pure hype. The song is fast paced with a good build up as well. The visuals are also very fast paced and bright with decent animation throughout. The content of the opening doesn't spoil anything, in turn not giving any hints on how much of the manga will be adapted in this season. As a whole, it's something I will be watching for all 13 episodes, and you should too. So by no means it starts off the same way as the manhwa. Everything after the opening started at from roughly chapter 3 to chapter 4, I'll say roughly from chapter 4 onwards it's happened, or most of the stuff was covered after the opening. That's how I went for it. So it pretty much skipped most of the stuff from chapter 1 and 2, and it skipped a lot of in-between stuff. I'll talk about this later of some of the revealed content, as it may spoil some elements that may be presented in flashback form, and I don't want to really spoil that. So just wait to the end of the video where I'll go over most of the cut content or skipped past content throughout the episode. So as a whole, the episode was good in portraying the exaggerated expression Mori has throughout the manhwa. I'm glad they're using this as well in the anime. It's pretty much the main point that gives out the greatness of Mori and many of the comedy elements that are actually funny as fuck throughout the manhwa, and I hope can be portrayed in the anime. And with the focus on the exaggerated expressions he has and many of the other characters as well, it's good that it's going down that route. I'm glad for that. It featured a fully sick transition during the middle of the episode, with one of them being a pixel one, which was very cool. Really enjoyed that and the uniqueness of that. It went straight into the tournament after the bike thing, which could be interesting. I'll talk about this later in the skip content, but it's very fast paced compared to how the manhwa started. It's extremely fast paced compared to how the manhwa started. The episode did a good job in somewhat explaining the fighting system and had a reasonable emphasis on the levels, which comes into play a lot throughout the early parts of the God of High School, and how many of the characters look at the level, and as a reader just looking at the levels as well. For an anime only, I think this episode was great in showing the strong suit of the anime, which is the battles and the comedy elements. That's good to hear. But as a whole, it's definitely an anime original, and by no means is adapting everything from the manhwa or being an exact anime copy of the manhwa. It's pretty much could be considered its own thing with how much it deviated during this first episode. The soundtrack throughout the episode was solid, and I'm really impressed with the sound design for the fights, with the impact of the punches really having a logical sound effects to it and really having an intense and big oof behind it, which I really enjoyed. The animation throughout the whole episode was solid, looks good and promising for the rest of the anime, especially during the big major fight scenes that are to come quite soon, with how much was adapted throughout this episode. The ending is chill. It does have some hints at some stuff not covered in the content that it kind of skipped past, but as a whole, it was just chill. Doesn't spoil anything whatsoever. It was just a lighthearted and pretty soothing ending. I really enjoyed that. Now I'll go over some skipped content. If you don't want the chance of getting spoiled, as I mentioned before, they may bring many of this stuff in the form of flashback. They mentioned it where someone or a commissioner had a fight with one of the contestants prior, which I'll talk about that now. So if you don't want the possibility of spoilers, make sure to click off the video after subscribing, and hope you enjoyed. So for some of the skipped content that throughout the episode, so as a whole, it went like a lot of chapters. I was surprised how much it really went into, and it really didn't follow the same way how the tournament started out and the process of the tournament. It's kind of being extremely unique. An example of most of the skipped content was the main three characters that we could really see, the Mori and the girl and the other guy. Their backstories on why they're joining the tournament in the first place was skipped. Mori looks at one of the executives saying, "I can't wait to fight him," but it looks like we're going to get their backstories of how that led up to that later on. That's why I didn't really want to mention this in the earlier parts. But as we know, the manhwa started out with Mori having the fight with the blonde-haired commissioner, so that's a very interesting thing to note. A ton of content as a whole was skipped. They skipped past a lot of the description of the God of High School and how it works, and how the God of High School prizes work. They mentioned the wish, finished, but it didn't go into nowhere near the amount of detail in the manhwa. And the overlying plot was touched upon near the start of the thing, but it wasn't really fleshed out or hinted at as much as the early parts of the manhwa. Also, the early parts of the manhwa had a lot of bonding between the three main characters before it even really got into the main tournament, or with this being pretty much the preliminaries of the tournament, which goes from like the first like 20 or so chapters, with this going like skipping to already the end of that. We didn't see really any of the commissioners, which had a big part or big role at the start of the manhwa, with this not really being presented whatsoever during the first episode of the anime. It did have glimpses of it, and did have the mention of one of them getting injured, but nowhere near the same amount of stuff was portrayed. So when it comes to chapters, the end of the episode was pretty much halfway through chapter 7 of the God of High School, and they really only covered stuff from chapter about halfway through chapter 4 to chapter 7, with them even skipping a lot of stuff in between that. So only really bits and pieces from chapter 2, chapter 4 to 7, only really bits and pieces around there. So that's very interesting to consider. 7 chapters pretty much adapted throughout episode 1, and it was very fast paced. I enjoyed it as a whole that much, but they're definitely not going for the pretty much slow adapting everything route. They're really getting into it and trying to get a lot of stuff shown and not really having a focus on many of the backstories. But while saying that, it could be fleshed out later during the fights and may have a different pretty much adaptation or sequence of events happening. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed today's review, make sure to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts of the review, how I can improve, and so on. So let me know your thoughts of the episode down in the comments. Did you enjoy it? Let me know. I personally did enjoy it for what it was, but that's everything for today's video. Peace.